we move on to react to the 2024 Ballon d'Or nominees. Obviously, we know the nominees for the Ballon d'Or is ridiculously long. In my opinion, way too long. Because it's just unnecessarily the amount of players that they have on here. Because we know it really comes down to like 3 or 4 that are legit. Not even 3 or 4. It really comes down to 2 legitimate contenders, and then the rest are kind of there to, be decoration. But I will say this: this year may be a little bit difficult to decide, as opposed to previous years. And on top of that as well, this is the first time actually that Messi or Ronaldo, neither of those players will be a nominee since 2003. That's when I was born. The last time Messi and Ronaldo was not on a Ballon d'Or nominee list is the year I was birthed. I was born, which is mind-boggling to think about. The sort of dominance those two players has had, pushing each other to be even greater, game in, game out. I mean, they're really 2 of the greatest players of all time. One is the greatest player of all time, and the other is not that far behind him. And yeah, they're, it's phenomenal. But going back to this year's list, we go open it up. This is in no particular order. Vinicius Jr., Real Madrid. Rodri for Manchester City. Jude Bellingham for Real Madrid. Dani Carvajal for Real Madrid. Bukayo Saka for Arsenal. Ruben Diaz for Manchester City. William Saliba for Arsenal. Fede Valverde for Real Madrid. Cole Palmer for Chelsea. Lamine Yamal for Barcelona. Erling Haaland for Manchester City. Kylian Mbappé for PSG. He's listed here as a Real Madrid player, but for PSG, because that's where he had his season. Toni Kroos for Real Madrid. Martin Odegaard for Arsenal. Emiliano Martinez from Aston Villa. Granit Xhaka for Bayer Leverkusen. Artem Dovbyk for Roma. He had his season at Girona, but he's listed as a Roma player. Harry Kane for Bayern Munich. Matt Hummels from Roma. He's listed as a Roman player. We'll discuss him signing for Roma in the next segment, actually, but it's really for what he did at Borussia Dortmund. Hakan Çalhanoğlu for Inter Milan. Nico Williams for Athletic Bilbao. Phil Foden for Manchester City. Florian Wirtz for Bayer Leverkusen. Dani Olmo for Barcelona. Declan Rice for Arsenal. Vitinha for PSG. Ademola Lookman for Atalanta. Lautaro Martinez for Inter Milan. Alejandro Grimaldo for Bayer Leverkusen, and then Antonio Rudiger for Real Madrid. I will say the surprising thing in this list is they listed Alejandro Grimaldo, Granit Xhaka, but no Jeremy Frimpong. Jeremy Frimpong, and this is not to take away anything that Alejandro Grimaldo did. I thought he was simply sensational as well for Bayer Leverkusen. But Jeremy Frimpong was also really, really, really important for Bayer Leverkusen. And for me, they both deserved, to be a Ballon d'Or nominee. I thought it was pretty weird that, Grimaldo, because look, you could argue, Jeremy Frimpong didn't play game in, game out for the Netherlands as they reached the semi-final. Alejandro Grimaldo, he didn't sniff the pitch for Spain either. And the only game he got to play is the game that, that third group stage game where Luis de la Fuente rested everyone. In fact, Jeremy Frimpong had more of a real role in that Netherlands team. There was a few games that he actually started. That second game against France, in a game that was actually meaningful, he started, and yeah, it's for me it's a little it's a little weird, but that's not to here nor there. Just going back quickly, but for me, I would say Granit Xhaka deserves to be high on this list for Leverkusen. I do believe if he were able to get farther with Switzerland, if they were able to get past England, and then maybe potentially, they would have faced Netherlands. Who knows what would happen? And if he went on an even deeper run with Switzerland, combine that with what how important he was for Leverkusen, that would have skyrocketed him up this list. He's not going to be a contender now because of that, because of not being able to take that next level of Switzerland. But he's a really, really great player. And he could be high on this list. Florian Wirtz, I think he's still going to be pretty high up in this list. I can see him cracking the top 7 or 8 or so. And if he was able to, win it with Germany, I think that would have skyrocketed him. And, we see a few Arsenal players in there. Martin Odegaard, William Saliba, Martin Orga, William Saliba, Declan Rice, which is sort of, the reward to them for what they've been able to do for Arsenal and how great Arsenal were this season, racking up 89 points, an impressive achievement. Vitinha and that run that he had in the Champions League, for what he did at PSG, Ademola Lookman, what he was able to do at Atlanta, getting to the Europa League final and then scoring that hat-trick in the final. Lautaro Martinez being on this list for the absolutely unbelievable season he had at Inter Milan. Phil Foden, he's going to be a contender as well, just for the great season he had at Manchester City, winning the PFA Player of the Year. Toni Kroos, for what he was able to do Real Madrid, win the final, Champions League final, win La Liga in his last season, and be an important piece to Germany as they made a run in the European Championship again. Now, if they won the European Championship, he would really be up high in this list. Also, Bukayo Saka as well. I don't think I included him in the list of Arsenal players. The Real Madrid players being in there: Jude Bellingham, Vinicius Jr., Federico Valverde, Dani Carvajal, Antonio Rudiger. They're all getting rewarded for that Champions League run. Toni Kroos, they're all getting rewarded for that Champions League run as well. We know the realistic ones that have a real shot at winning it is Vinicius and Jude Bellingham. There's a lot of clamor about Dani Carvajal winning with Real Madrid and Spain, but let's be realistic. Erling Haaland for Manchester City, of course, what he's been able to do. Emiliano Martinez, what he's been able to do at Aston Villa, being the goalkeeper for a team that, made the top 4. It's Aston Villa team that's not really expected to make the top 4. They were expected to be really, really good, but we thought entering the season top 4 maybe a little bit too much of a push. So, he's getting, Aston Villa are getting rewarded for that. Cole Palmer, that amazing standout season he had at Chelsea. He's continued to pick up that great form this season. Matt Hummels, him and the Borussia Dortmund team being able to reach the final, being a part of a very good defense, especially down the stretch in the Champions League for Dortmund. In terms of the general season in the Bundesliga, they didn't, defensively they were pretty weak, but in that Champions League run, they defended really, really well. So there was a lot of players that were on here. Hakan Çalhanoğlu for what he was able to do at Inter Milan, and combined being able to lead Turkey to quarterfinals. And then Artem Dovbyk, that great season he had at Girona, which actually earned him, a transfer to Roma. That earned him the transfer to Roma. But for me, the main talk of the show is the real contenders here. And, it's, I don't agree with this, but from what I hear, the nominees, the top 3 are going to be Jude Bellingham. I don't agree with that one. I do agree with the top 2, though, Vinicius and Rodri. I do think they are the 2 deservings of the Ballon d'Or. Only one of them can win it, but I think they're like the top 2. I will edge out Rodri because Rodri was able to do it for City and Spain. And, in times in the past, the Ballon d'Or, that international tournament has been very, very valued. You see what Messi won the World Cup in 2022. He went on to win the Ballon d'Or despite doing nothing in the club ring for Well, he didn't do nothing, but he, let me take that back. He wasn't nothing for PSG, but he didn't do much at the club level compared to Erling Haaland that had a record. I think he had like 35 goals in 34 games in the Premier League, something crazy like that. He was part of the Manchester City team that won the treble as well that season. You know, the obvious choice there was Haaland, but they really valued that World Cup. Ballon d'Or, they value the international trophies. And Vinicius Jr. in Brazil, they got eliminated in the quarterfinal, partly because Vinicius Jr. was suspended in that game. But overall, that opening, that group stages, he was pretty inconsistent for Brazil. He had that really good game against Paraguay, but opening against Costa Rica, he was just not good enough. Against Colombia again, and then he ended up getting suspended as well. For me, Rodri, the dictator, the composer. He dictated all the tempo. He was so composed in midfield. He got the ball from one end to the other, and he was such an important part to Manchester City. They played like a different team when he was off the pitch. And then if you look at what he was able to do for Spain, this is the first tournament that he's been able to play his natural position as that holding midfield for his country because of Sergio Busquets, who recently retired from Spain. This was Rodri's time to shine. And again, doing things that he did best, dictating tempo, being composed, controlling the game, controlling possession, and also had, that a moment that Spain had. It's not, it's not the biggest of moments, but it was an important moment in my opinion. Georgia go down to Spain 1-0 in the round. Spain go down to Georgia 1-0 in that round of 16. In Spain, they're looking for the breakthrough. They can't even find the moment, and it is early in the first half. But the longer it goes 0-0, it's a dangerous for Spain, very very dangerous, especially because we know what happened in years past. Spain going up against weaker oppositions, going down. It's hard for them to break down. But he had that moment in the 36th minute. He was able to get that strike. Slightly outside of the box, make it 1-1 right before the half, and completely change the momentum of Spain. It was a big, big moment in the tournament for Spain, and then they went on to win it, and he was amazing as well. For me, Rodri has to win Ballon d'Or. You have to reward him, and yes, he doesn't play the most appealing positions, and to the naked eye, you might not really see what he does exactly. Like if you're not a proper football fan, you don't really understand the impact he has. But this team moves differently with a guy like Rodri in there. You see that for Manchester City when he's out, and for me, you have to value that.